I've finally seen Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. So let's talk about it. Alright, first of all, I'm going to go full spoilers on this. So if you haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker, go see it. Or don't. You don't need me to help you make up your mind. So, I appreciated the serious tone of this movie. I don't think there was any kind of cheesiness or silliness in it. The introduction of Palpatine was done surprisingly well, considering the movie just kind of started off by saying, "Hey, Palpatine's back!" None of this was foreshadowed in any way by the previous movies. So, given that, it was surprising just how well it did kind of work, and just how natural it did feel to have him just be there. So, his actual return via abilities that some would consider unnatural was not much of an explanation. But it was a nice link back to Star Wars Episode 3. I would have liked more. I would have liked some real explanation of how he actually survived. But honestly, I'm not sure there was really room for any more exploration of that in this movie. So, yeah, I'm okay with it. The whole idea that Palpatine had always been there in the background as the hidden puppet master, and how he kind of created Snoke, almost like a clone, to basically be his puppet in the world. That whole idea was surprisingly satisfying, a lot more than I expected it would have been. And Leia's scenes worked quite well. They were surprisingly able to tell quite a cohesive story using the character, especially considering they basically just had whatever footage was left over from the previous two movies to work with. If I hadn't have known, I might not have figured it out. But that brings me to my biggest regret about this trilogy: no Jedi Leia. Now, this movie did at least make an effort to go back and explain that, which was pretty cool. But I would have loved to have seen Carrie Fisher wielding a lightsaber. Episode 9 felt less formulaic than previous movies in this trilogy had. The final space battle served a similar purpose to the Death Star battles, but it was different enough to be unique. Rey's character journey in this film was great. She finally got a decent character arc. Unfortunately, her role as being the granddaughter of Palpatine was spoiled for me by one of those subhuman life forms that went on a Babylon 5 Facebook group of all places and just blurted it out. So I can only imagine the impact that this reveal would have had on me had I gone in fresh. In today's day and age, you always run the risk of spoilers whenever you step onto social media. I took reasonable precautions, but this was just a troll who was deliberately trying to ruin people's day. What can you do? I enjoyed Lando's involvement in this movie. There was still that kind of roguish aspect to him, but at the same time you could see how age had calmed him down a little bit and turned him into more of a philosophical mentor kind of figure than you might have expected him to become. And yet, it was done in a way that felt natural and realistic. I loved Kylo Ren's journey in this movie. Leia's sacrifice to reach out to her son in a last-ditch effort to try and redeem him is something that any parent could understand. We'd all do that for our kids. But it was the next scene where Kylo sees his father that really broke me. I never thought a Star Wars movie would make me cry, but this scene reached me on an emotional level I just wasn't ready for. It was beautifully written and beautifully acted. This was the highlight of the movie for me. I can't say enough good things about it. Well done to the writers, well done to Adam Driver, and well done to Harrison Ford. It really was a beautiful scene, and yeah, just great. J.J. Abrams had a difficult job with this movie. Not just telling a story, and not just wrapping up a trilogy, but wrapping up the entire 9-part saga of Star Wars. Honestly, I wasn't sure he was going to be able to pull it off. But he did a decent job. The climax with Rey and Palpatine really did feel like a culmination of all three trilogies. I loved hearing the voices of all those Jedi from previous movies. I'd actually have loved to have seen Hayden Christensen return as a Force ghost of Anakin in this movie. He would have had some things to say to Kylo Ren, who had venerated all the wrong parts of his life. And he would have been a big encouragement to Rey. But hearing his voice saying, "Bring balance as I once did," well, that was kind of the next best thing. I was so glad to see Kylo fully redeemed and helping Rey. I wasn't even bothered by their kiss at the end. If he hadn't died, I can almost potentially see a future where they might have worked together as a long-term couple. And having Rey take on the name Skywalker from her adopted family, I thought that was very fitting. This is now one of my favourite Star Wars movies. It had the epic climax of both Revenge of the Sith and Return of the Jedi, but no cheesiness or silliness. I mean, we see a couple of Ewoks for like a few seconds, which was a nice callback, I enjoyed that. But it didn't have the cheesiness of the battle in Return of the Jedi. I enjoyed all three of the Disney Star Wars movies, but I do acknowledge that they've kind of missed some of their potential. To me, the biggest issue was the lack of cohesiveness and planning. It felt like the writers of each movie were just making stuff up as they went, rather than planning out a proper 3-part story. If they'd been more deliberate about where they were going, this trilogy could have been substantially better. But I can't complain, because The Rise of Skywalker was a good movie, and that final scene with Rey with the yellow lightsaber, plus some things that I've read online, suggest we may not have seen the last of Rey Skywalker. I'm looking forward to seeing what they might do with the Star Wars franchise long term. Well, that's my thoughts on The Rise of Skywalker. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so we can geek out about lots of other sci-fi and fantasy movies and TV shows. And don't forget to check out my book, Jewel of the Stars, at books2read.com, that's number 2, /Jewel. I'll catch you next time. See you out there.